So this is Stuart. So Stuart is the chair of a community pub in Denbighshire in Wales. And it's a community benefits society. They registered using Plunkett's model rules, which registers you as a community benefits society. And we have a registration service that helps groups through that process. The group were awarded a COF grant in round 2, window 2 of £175,000. And at that point in COF, you had to provide a 50% match. So it was a little bit more difficult than it is currently. The pub opened under community ownership in August 2023. So huge congratulations to the group for being open and doing it and being such a success. But I guess the first question, Stuart, that I had really was, could you just set the scene of your organisation, your area, and the pub as an asset as well? What was the project and how did it all come about?
Well, yes, thank you. It started really a few years ago when the pub was actually up for sale, and a few of us got together in the village, and it wouldn't be a great idea if we bought it for the community. This was pre-COVID. In fact, it was about 2018. The price was just way too high, and in fact, it turned out that the owner really wanted to just sell the asset for the maximum price, and the maximum price would be property development, and that really sort of horrified us in the community. Our beloved pub, it might not be a pub any longer, and I think that really got people thinking. We did have discussions with the owner at the time, but what happened was some people from the village took out another lease, which reopened it. And then we had COVID. They kept it going as best they could during COVID. And then they said, look, they really didn't want to continue with it. And it was struggling as a business. And that this may well be the case with other village pubs, that as a commercial enterprise, it might be struggling, but it might not if it's a community-owned business. And then the owner actually approached us, so we'd established a bit of a relationship with him. Gosh, I mean, it's about 2.5 years ago now. So that was spring in 2021, and basically said, "Do you want to buy it?" So again, I just seem to be in the sort of pole position of I was being asked, and I have to say I've got no pub experience whatsoever, except I enjoy having a drink in the village pub. So I had a strong incentive and just talked to various people in the village. And it was suggested to us that we needed to get in touch with the Plunkett Foundation. And without the Plunkett Foundation, we would not have succeeded. And I think the guidance and so on all the way through has been tremendous. So the first thing I'd say is, you don't have to be experts. You just got to be passionate about your pub and passionate about the community. And the help and advice is there. We stalled a bit because we were trying to establish all sorts of legal things and the price and so on. And the price was 300,000, and that was actually agreed fairly early on. We got, having joined the Plunkett, we were able to get a valuation report. And that basically confirmed that, yes, that was a reasonable price, etc. And it was last year we had an open meeting because, as I say, the process was stalling a little bit. And at the local meeting, actually, our local MP came along. And afterwards, he said, "Why didn't you apply for the community ownership fund?" We said, "Well, we didn't know that there was a window open for applying for it." And he said, "Well, you can put in an expression of interest any time." And literally that was on the Thursday. By the Saturday afternoon, I'd submitted an expression of interest. That was the easy bit. And it really went from there. So we were successful with that. And then we were invited to submit a full proposal. Now, of course, you don't have to, I believe it's 3 or 4 times a year, you can actually submit the full proposal. But because the owner by this stage was really saying, are you serious? Are you really going to buy this pub? Because if not, I've got a plan B. And we said, yes, 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 we really want to move it along. And this is where the stage which we're at. And as a result, we said, look, we've got to submit for the December window for the full proposal. And again, I contacted yourself, the Plunket, and said, help, what do we do? The full proposal looks a much more serious affair, and there's lots of questions where there's nuances which clearly, one has to get right. And so as a result, we were assigned an advisor, Mark McTaggart. I think it was a bit horrified the amount that we had to do in about 2.5 weeks. And I said, we'll do it. Whatever we have to do, we'll just do it. And it was quite exciting, really. And the way people pulled together, we got quite a substantial steering group at this stage with we'd brought some new people on board who were very good. And we submitted it. And then over the Christmas period, I said, right, we've got to crack on now with the share offer scheme, because we're going to have to match that grant if we get it. And we went for the maximum, by the way. So we went, the rules at the time, half the capital, so that's 150k, and the other 25k was actually for revenue, because we realized we could have some startup costs and things like that. So we put in as much as we possibly could. Our business plan basically said we needed to raise 350,000 for the purchase, plus all the other things you have to do to be able to get up and operational. And it was during so we launched the time limited share offer in February, and that finished at the 6-week period, finished at the end of March. And halfway through March, when I have to say we were struggling a bit, we got the news that we were successful with the COF. So then it was like, come on, you can double your money. And I have to say, a share offer scheme, despite the fact lots of people say they're going to invest, actually getting them to invest. And of course, there's cost of living crisis and people's circumstances change. But I'm not a salesman, and but I tell you, we all became quite pushy during that period, and it was down to the last week. And I think again, I contacted you, said, I think we may not make it, because we had to match this grant. We had a minimum figure 150k, and a week before we hadn't even hit the 150k. And I said, I do not want to give this money back. Anyway, by the end of the week, and I don't know how we did it, how it happened, but we hit nearly 200k, so we actually exceeded our target, and that's been really valuable in terms of giving us a little bit of extra cash for setting things up, etc. So we completed the purchase in August, 18th of August, and we've been going ever since. It's been a steep climb in terms of getting things up and running. We're hoping to be able to put some food on in the next month or so. And again, a lot of work on that. But yeah, it is a success story. It's a pretty stormy ride, I would say. I wouldn't say it was easy, but working together with the Plunket Foundation, with people in the community, it's a big team effort, and it's amazing, what you can achieve. And I just reiterate, I know nothing about running pubs.
Thank you, Stuart. Yeah, I remember getting a couple of quite tense phone calls towards the end of your share offer, but you did fantastically in the end, which was brilliant to hear. Just going back a step, how did you know that you had community support enough to do this? Where did that really come from? Were people quite emotionally invested, do you think, in the idea of the pub? What did it mean to people?
I think, yes, initially it was, talking to various people that I knew, and who, thought it was a good idea. But at the very early stage, so 2021, we still had COVID restrictions, and you suggested that actually we need to do a survey in the community. So we had a sort of a bit of a hybrid survey, with doing it online I think with SurveyMonkey, and then also printing out some questionnaires. So with that, we were able to engage with a wider community and really gauge what the level of support was, and indeed what the level of commitment would be for all the volunteering things that are necessary for running a pub. And then we had an open meeting in the church, because that's sort of the biggest building we've got in the village, and we packed the church, and that was November last year. And again, we used that as evidence and the feedback from that meeting in the COF application. So the two together, demonstrated that we had community support.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. And if you've got a packed out church, that's always a great indication that something's going well, isn't it? So apart from obviously being a pub and the aspiration to start doing food and people coming in having drinks, what other benefits do you hope that this project is giving to your community, and what sort of aspirations do you have for it in terms of the community impact?
Yes, we had to go into this in some detail in the COF application, and I think that's quite an important part of the COF application. And you get the same question asked in different ways, as I recall. And it did make us dig a little bit deeper into, the demographics, how we fit in terms of the Denbighshire County plan. We are in an area of outstanding natural beauty, and potentially we could become a national park with the Clwydian range, because we're on the Clwydian range of hills, and Offers Dyke Path runs quite close to the village. So there's a lot of different aspects to look at in terms of what the benefits would be to people in the village, but also the wider community and the wider environment as well. And all of those we needed to address in the COF application. But in terms of, is it just a pub? Well, no, it's not just a pub, it's a community pub. And that becomes a bit of a community centre. It becomes, I look at it as a crystal, different facets of a crystal. And it can be, in a way, whatever different parts of the community want. So there's some people in the community, they don't like going to pubs. They don't want to go to the pub, but they'd like to go and have a coffee to meet friends. And this last weekend, we managed to open the coffee shop, and we hope to extend that for our other opening hours during the week. So we've got at least 2 community groups who meet during the week. So although during the week we will only be open for pub hours in the evening, we'll open it up during the day for community meetings. So we're still feeling our way. We'd like it to be open all the time, but that's dependent on how much volunteer support we get.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm also bearing in mind that you only got the pub in August, so I think you're doing all right. Yeah, it's something that I think we should stress that DLUC want to know about is that community benefit and the community impact. And that's really what's behind the whole fund. It's saving an asset, yes, but it's why are you wanting to save the asset and what good is going to come out of it. So yeah, they do ask about that quite repetitively, I think, in the application form.
I think that's right. And the other thing that made us think about was we're in a rural area, rural deprivation. Now, you can say, well, we're quite a wealthy village, but one of the phrases that came up was that people might be, be asset rich, but cash poor. If you've got quite a lot of retired people and that kind of thing, but also opportunities for younger people. And we can see tremendous opportunities, training opportunities, indeed work experience opportunities, and that kind of thing. It's difficult for youngsters in a rural community. Our public transport is virtually non-existent. So there's a lot of opportunities going forward to actually help and enrich our community.
Yeah, And those things that you've outlined, those challenges for rural communities, are really common. And those are the sorts of things that Plunkett hears time and time again. And I think you're right with certainly with young people. We've got community pubs that offer apprenticeships, for example, and formal training qualifications in hospitality and things like that, NVQs. So yeah, the potential is huge, but it's one step at a time. Did you apply to the COF for revenue funding alongside your capital? And if you did, what did you spend that on?
Right. Okay. Yes. I mean, when we had the funding agreement, we found that we had to actually go into it in somewhat greater detail, and we would have categories, obviously, of the revenue funding. So that's something that we had to think quite carefully about in terms of what would be compliant and accepted. And I have to say, I wasn't convinced that all of the 25k of revenue funding would be accepted, but it was. And that was good. And I think that there's reflection on the fact that we obviously took advice on it. We did think about it quite carefully. So the things that we asked for was you're going to need to buy to purchase stock and everything to open up. We employed a pub manager. We needed a pub manager from day one. So we, I think, put in 2 or 3 months of salary for the pub manager, and that was accepted. And also we bought some assets from the previous tenants, such as some furniture and various bits and pieces that they bought, and we kind of agreed on a price with them. So that was included as well.
Okay, it's good to have some examples, I think, because sometimes groups get to the revenue element and think, oh, what can I put in here? What does it actually mean? So I think some good examples there. Thank you. How will you involve all the community in the long term? I mean, you've identified those challenges, and we mentioned isolation, and we mentioned young people and a lack of transport. So what do you do, ongoing to include people in the community and get them thinking about using the pub for different things, or trying to engage them with volunteering or with helping you deliver other things?
Yes. So we've got lots of ideas in the business plan, and as you point out, it's one step at a time. It's very important, I think, in the early stages that the community see that there are wider benefits. It's not just a question of going there and having a pint, although that's very enjoyable and very important to many people in the village. And I did mention there's 2 community groups, one for elderly people, and the other one, which is a craft group, who now meet once a month there, and we open specially for them and have refreshments. We think the coffee shop is a big opportunity to reach a wider audience. And funnily enough, earlier I had some message on one of my many WhatsApp groups, and this is one for the church, saying, well, we've got a carol service on the 3rd of December. And are we going to have sort of coffee in the back of church as usual, or are we going to go over to the pub because the coffee shop's open?
So you said yes, come to the pub.
It's exactly the sort of thing that we want.
Yeah.
And I can just give you a few very quick examples of how it's been able to engage with what we call different constituencies, within the community. A community choir has just been started for the sort of celebration of Christmas on Christmas Eve, and so they're meeting weekly in the pub. We got a darts team who actually won the summer league, the Denbigh Summer League, which is fantastic. And they, from day one, they came along and said, is it all right if you open Monday evenings? Because we weren't open normally on Monday. It's okay to open Monday evenings so that we can have our darts matches. So we said, yeah. So there's like opportunities come up where we've been approached, and then we do our best to try and accommodate whatever it is, so that they can come and use this wonderful facility.
Yeah, no, that's great. I like to hear the stories of how it's kind of organically people are starting to think about it, and just using that space that is now controlled by the community and at their disposal in a way, which is fantastic. Thank you, Stuart, for that.